Hi guys! So sorry my movie is one day late. Sick babies don't let mommies take very good videos. Okay, so today we're talking about photography and how to make the switch from auto to manual. So anyone can take a picture. Only a few are actual professionals. Before you get into editing, you've got to learn how to get a picture right in your camera. In today's society, those who do call themselves professional photographers have grown, but many of many don't know how to get out of auto. So some are self-taught, some go to university like myself to understand what makes photography a work of art. My goal today is to help people get from auto mode to manual mode by explaining the different elements of the settings. So let's talk about those three different things: ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. We'll talk about each of them and how they can alter your photograph and what they are. So first off, ISO. What does it mean? ISO stands for International Standards Organization, and the reason it's not something very photography related is there were different settings and different ways of doing this setting, and the world internationally has come together in order to make this setting a standard across across the world, not just the nation, but it's a standard now. So according to the Digital Photography School, it's described as a way to measure the sensitivity of the image sensor in your camera. The lower the number, the less sensitive your camera is to light, and the finer the grain will be. So this is a more difficult thing to explain than aperture or shutter speed. But when you have a higher ISO, there's more noise or grain, and you can actually see those grains on the picture. When you have a lower number, such as 100 is the lowest you can go, the shot is more crisp and smooth. So you generally want to have the lowest ISO possible to get the best printed picture, but sometimes you'll need to go to a higher ISO to get an action shot or to let more light in if you're in a dark area. So 4 great questions to ask yourself when setting your ISO is: for your light, is the subject well lit? Grain, do I want a grainy shot or one without noise? Tripod, are you using a tripod? Moving subject, is my subject moving or stationary? So let's move on to aperture. Now, aperture can have a few different names. To us photographers, we refer to it as an f-stop. And generally you will see F dash and a number. So, to put it simply, aperture is the opening of the lens. Now, it's more difficult to remember this one because it is opposites. The lower the number, such as 1.8, 2.0, 2.8, the bigger the opening is and the more light that is let in. And then the bigger the number, such as f16, f20, f22, the smaller the opening is. Now, what do those mean? The bigger the opening, the more light and the shorter depth of field you'll have. So if you had, say, a 2.8 f-stop, I would be in focus and everything behind me would be blurred. Kind of how our eyes focus on something and the rest is blurred in the background. Now, if you do a higher f-stop, such as the f22, then you have me in focus and everything behind me in focus as well. Those are always great for landscape shots, or if you want to get everything in focus. But generally, you want to have a lower f-stop, and so that you can focus on the subject and not on the background. One thing with auto mode is that you don't really get to change this option, and generally you are in focus or your subject is in focus, and so is the background. So learning to change the aperture or the f-stop can change your photographs and how you see them. And so the last setting to change is shutter speed. So Darren Rowe from the Digital Photography School explains it. It's defined most basically, shutter speed is the amount of time that the shutter is open. Now when we push the trigger, you hear the shutter. That's the shutter opening and closing. And it's measured by hundredths of a second. So the higher the number, the faster it will open and close. So if you go with the fast shutter speed, such as 1/1000th of a second, you stop motion and you freeze it in time. The lower your shutter speed, such as 1/60th of a second, it can blur the motion. If you go lower than 1/60th of a second, say for 30 seconds, you may need a tripod to keep your image in focus and maybe have the motion blurred. This step can be difficult to gauge because it's many different things that you have to take into consideration. But once you find that sweet spot, you can make amazing works of art. So I know manual can be daunting and it takes a lot of practice, but learning how to change your settings in your camera was the hardest part for me. After that, it's just practicing on finding those sweet spots. But practice doesn't always make perfect, but practice does make progress. So I've been doing photography for about 4 years now, and I'm just getting the hang of it, nowhere near professional, but I've taken some photography classes and editing classes, and it definitely helps. So even if you don't want to be a pro, photography is all around us. There's no right or wrong way to do photography and create art. But it is hard to create art and to take pictures without knowledge about your medium. Now, I challenge you to go out and try manual. Thanks.